So my daughter, she turned 17, and she utters those words that strike fear into the heart of every parent. She says to me, "Dad, I want to learn to drive." I haven't got to the punchline yet. "Will you take me out in your car?" So I find myself in Lidl car park after it's shut. We're sitting there. And we pick a long, straight path of the car park. And I'm teaching her to do the gears and the gentle acceleration. I say, when we get to the line, press brake. And I'm sitting there, and just before we start, she turns to me and she said, "Are you okay, Dad?" I thought I was hiding it. I said, "Yeah, absolutely fine. Off we go." And so we drive, and she gently takes off, moves it up into second gear, and stops at the line. And so I drive round, and she does it again. Great stuff. Does it again, third time. We get to the line, and she pressed brake, and she said, "Dad, can we try turning?" And I said, "Okay, so it's a square, the car park. We're going to go around, but we're going to pretend that there's like traffic and stuff, so I'll teach you to do mirror signal maneuver and indicators and stuff." And so we drive up to the first junction, and she's to turn right and to go around. And I show her first what to do, and then we set off. And she indicates, and she pulls into the center, and she's driving towards it. And I said, "Have a look, is it clear?" It's clear. And then she pulls around the corner, and she starts to move off into the junction of this car park. And I said, "Start turning, Emma. Start turning, Emma. Emma, start turning!" She slams on the brakes. She turns to me. She said, "Dad, stop shouting at me." And I say, "Emma, stop driving into a wall." She doesn't quite drive into a wall, but you get the gist. But what's the real issue here? What is it when you've been driving your own car for decades, and then you could put into the passenger seat with a 17-year-old in the driver's seat? What is the real issue that's going on? I mean, some of you're in that position even as adults, and you've got another adult in the car, and they're in the passenger seat, and you're driving along, and they're trying to slam on the brakes, aren't they? You know what I mean? And it's that sense of we need to be in control. And when there's situations in our life and we're in the passenger seat and we have zero control, it evokes anger and it evokes anxiety. Because when we're in control, we feel a sense of peace. When you're in control of your house and everything is as it should be, you feel a sense of peace. When you're in control of your finances and there's the right money in the bank and there's no spending gone out that you didn't expect, you feel a sense of peace. When your kids do as they're told, you feel a sense of peace. When you've got the remote in your hand, you feel a sense of peace. But when it gets out of your control, when you hear those rumors at work that actually there's going to be job cuts, or they're going to be putting departments together and you need to apply for your own job, or there's just rumors and stuff, instead of peace, you start to feel anxiety if you're not in control. You know, when you get that lump, or you go to the doctors, or you need to send for tests and stuff, you start to feel that you're not in control. When your kids get to 15 or 17 and they go off into town on their own, you feel that sense of not quite being in control anymore. And when we're in control, we have a sense of peace. But when there's stuff in our lives where we can't control it and it's not exactly as we want to be, it brings fear and it brings anxiety. But it also strains relationships, doesn't it? You know, anybody married to someone who likes to be in control? Don't put your hands up. Especially if you're with them. Anyone got a manager at work and they're a great manager and they're so encouraging as long as you do what they want, when they want, and exactly how they want you to do it. Micromanaging strains relationships in the home and in the workplace. And we start a new series today which is called God Is, and it's about this idea that God's character solves our deepest problems. Each week, we're going to be thinking about this idea that God's character solves our deepest problems. And today, we're thinking about a cure for our control issues. That sense of anxiety and peace and stress that we got. That strain in the relationships when we want things to be as we are and they're not quite. It creates all sorts of problems. Today, we're looking at a cure for our control issues. And we're going to find it in a story in Mark 4, a story of Jesus and his followers. In Mark 4, starting at verse 35. Let me read this to you. Particularly relevant for those of us who struggle with control issues, who struggle with that sense of peace unless it's exactly as we need it to be. This is what it says. As evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." This is a massive lake, about 7 miles across. It's going to take them 2 hours to go across. Jesus says, "Let's go to the other side." So his disciples, some of them who were fishermen, took Jesus in the boat and they started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat and it began to fill with water. These followers are fishermen. This is their area of expertise. This is the area where they don't feel stress, where they have a sense of peace, because normally things are under their control. They know what they're doing. They've got expertise. But here there's a fierce storm. There's high waves breaking into the boat and the water is filling up. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. Why does it say his head was on a cushion? Because the person telling the story is remembering. It's an eyewitness account. You don't put that in if you're making it up. And it's Peter who will have given this story, who was right there in the boat. Mark wrote it down for him. A little clue that it's a real eyewitness account. Jesus is sleeping. So what do the disciples do? They've lost control of their situation. They normally have control, everything's as they want, but now they're in a position where they've lost control. And they do what you do and what I do when our finances got out of control, or our relationships, or our work, or our health. They panic. The disciples woke Jesus up and they shouted, "Teacher, don't you care if we're going to drown?" So Jesus woke up and he rebuked the wind and he said to the waves, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped and there was a great calm. And then he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And the disciples were terrified. Who is this man? Even the wind and even the waves obey him. Some of you will be in a position right now where actually this week you just lost control of something. Something happened and you're feeling right now your head's in a spin, you're all over because life is out of control and you're strategizing and you're trying to do all the techniques to get it in control. Some of you are not in that position at all. You think this is going to be an easy message because everything in my life is going swimmingly. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. My finances are right. This is all fine. Everything is fine. But the day will come when you'll be in the boat, and that illusion that you're in control of stuff will break down. And the disciples are in that position right now. Because the problem is that if our sense of peace is based upon the reality of us controlling stuff, then it's very fragile peace. It feels great at the time that our kids are doing what we want, that we've got money in the bank, we've got savings, we're in the nice house and we've got good friends, people we can trust. We're in a workplace that's really supportive and encouragement. And that can feel a real sense of peace. But if it's only like that because things are going well, it's very fragile. It's like you're setting up a stack of cards and it looks absolutely fine, but you know that any push and it's going to collapse. At any moment, it could collapse. Anything could happen at any moment. And when that happens, you'll find that your ability to control stuff just doesn't work. And in this story, we get offered an alternative. It's an alternative for those of us who are like, those ducks and your legs are paddling underwater right now. You're trying to get a cool of situation and it's not working. This story gives you an alternative. And it comes in the very odd questions. Jesus asks his disciples 2 questions, and he would ask us the question as well. When you're in that position, when there's a storm, when all sorts of stuff's all going all over the place. And the first odd question he asks, it's quite funny in a dark sort of way. He says, so they're in the boat, and there's a storm, and the water's going in the boat, and they're miles from the shore, and the boat is sinking in the way of Jesus. And Jesus look around and going, but what's going on? Well, why are you scared of this? And that makes no sense because it's like storm, water, boat, sinking, dead. That's why we're so scared. And you might come back from the doctors with a diagnosis. And Jesus said, why are you so afraid? And you're saying, did you not see what was on there? Your kid goes off to uni and they're no longer doing the things that they did at home and they're all over the place and you're freaking out and you can't sleep and you've got anxiety. And Jesus looks at you and said, well, why are you so afraid? And you're like, do you know what it's like being a teenager in 2024, Jesus? Why? But he asks it to the disciples, and he asks it to me, and he asks it to you. Why are you so afraid? Really what he's asking is, yeah, things are out of control in your life in that situation. But what he's really saying is, well, why are you trying to be in control in the first place? You didn't really think you could manage your kids, did you? You didn't really think that for the whole of life you were going to be in control of your health just because you ate an apple a day, did you? You didn't really think just because you got an Excel spreadsheet with your spending and your income and expenditure that actually it would never go well. You don't really believe just because you got married in a church and someone up here prayed blessing that you would live happily ever after. You didn't really think that was going to happen and it would be easy, did you? And then it gets odder because Jesus asks a second question. And it's this question that holds the key, that unlocks the thing that makes no sense, that you could have peace in the midst of a storm. And this is what he asks him. He says, do you still have no faith? Do you still have no faith? So when he says faith, he's not like saying when you fill in the survey in the national census, do you tick Christian or believe in God or all that sort of stuff. What he means by the word faith is a relaxed trust in God. I mean, it's not like what's in your head, it's like your heart, a relaxed trust in God. He's like, do you still not have this kind of relaxed trust in God? And he's saying still because he's been teaching them and he's been showing them stuff. And he's like, you've got a sense of God, you've seen stuff. And all that history of what I've been doing here, has that not yet led you to the point where in the midst of a storm, you can still have that relaxed sense of trust in God? Because here's the thing. The amount of peace you get is directly connected to the amount of relaxed trust in God you've got. It's not related to your bank account or people's behavior around you. The amount of peace is related to the amount of relaxed trust in God that you've got. And the amount of stress and worry and anxiety that you have and fear is directly related to the amount of relaxed trust in God that you don't have. They're directly connected. I don't mean like you go to church and you read the Bible and can you answer the questions about faith and you know the Greek. I mean, in your heart, do you have that really relaxed sense of trust in God, that God is great, that you don't need to be in control? And Jesus calms the storm and he calms the waves, and they think, even the wind, even the waves obey him. And essentially Jesus is saying this to him, God is great. God has got all this power to quieten the waves and the storm. So actually, you don't need to be in control. He's looking at their fear at the storm, and he looks at your anxiety around circumstances and stuff. So, I mean, we're not talking about medical diagnosis of anxiety here and that you read a Bible and it's all fixed. If you've got real mental health stuff, go to the professionals. That's what God's going to do to help you. But when we have that sense of fear, that anxiety, Jesus is saying, listen, God is great. Do you have any idea how great God is, that he can be in control? Actually, you don't need to. And the challenge is that our God is too small. There's this verse in Hebrews that says this. It says, Jesus sustains everything by the power of his word. Jesus sustains everything. It's not just he created everything, but he sustains everything by the power of his word. Everything in the world that has, was, and that is. He controls everything. But even beyond that, I don't know if you've ever had a mobile in your kid's bedroom or your bedroom of the planets. Or you had a book at home of the planets, and you got the sun in the middle, and then Mercury and Earth and Jupiter. And they're all like different sizes. Maybe the sun's quite big and the others are different sizes going out. And you get to see the sizes and the order. Maybe there's a poster in your classroom or whatever. Well, I realized recently that it's all a lie. That picture that you see and recognize the sun in the middle and then all the planets come out and they're all different sizes and the sun's big and they're small, etc., that actually it's not true. So in the interest of the scientific community, we're going to fix that right now, this morning. And I'm going to just teach you everything. I've got a GCSE in physics, chemistry, whatever. So I'm just going to teach you with the help of a few friends. So they don't know yet, but I'm going to invite a couple of friends to come and help me. Lawrence, will you just come and help me for a minute? Alan, will you come and help me, mate? Can you come up for a minute? Nigel Thompson, do you want to come and help? Andy Chard, you've fallen asleep in my message. Do you want to come up and help as well? Yeah, come up. And I want you to come and stand on this step. And you're going to be part of, this is history in the making, right? We're going to correct people's knowledge. I want you to stand up on the step here. Yeah. All right, yeah, stand on the step. Face the beautiful audience. Thanks, Lawrence, Andy, Nigel, etc. We are going to sort this issue out. Right. So I want you to imagine we're going to go for the smallest planet. So the smallest planet would be Mercury. So let's imagine Mercury is the smallest that we can see. It's a little dot on a page. If Mercury was a little dot, then the Earth would be a 5p piece, right? You're going to be Earth, Andy. Do you want to hold that for me? All right, you're going to be Earth. Earth would be a 5p piece if we had Mercury that was really tiny. Lawrence, you're going to be Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is pretty big. It's a big planet, all right? So if Mercury was a tiny dot, then Earth would be a 5p. Jupiter would be about the size of a dinner plate. Don't drop that because my wife's in the congregation, all right? And let's go to the last planet, which would be Neptune. And Neptune would be about the size of a bath bomb, about the size of a tennis ball, all right? So you hold them up, everyone can see them. And Nigel, you're going to be the sun. All right. Ooh, you're going to be the sun. All right. Now, in the cupboard over there is one of the giant tables for LifeCentre. All right. Now, in theory, we should go and get that. All right. But I haven't done a risk assessment, so we probably won't be allowed. So if you want to edge to the left a little bit, right, and I want you to open your arms as wide as you can, stretch as wide as you can. All right. That's how big the sun is. All right. So now the sun is that big, and if it was, Mercury is a tiny dot, you can hardly see it. We've got Earth that size, then we've got Jupiter, and we've got Neptune. So you can kind of see how that doesn't quite fit in your kid's bedroom as a mobile, can't you? All right. Can you imagine turning up the textbook in primary school and you like open it up and you wheel it in on a trolley? But that's like what it really looks like. But they're not actually this close together if we were to do this. All right, so we just need to correct scientific knowledge by just giving people a real sense. First time in history, a life-size model to scale of the planets, all right? So Nigel, what I need you to do is to go and stand next to that wall. You're going to be the sun, all right? There you go, mate. No, the yellow wall, all right? Okay, so we're going to assume that the sun's there and it's this big, right? And then Mercury's over here somewhere, the Earth, right? Do you want to head to the other wall there? All right, thank you. So we're going to stay there a minute, head there. Okay, so that's about 25 meters. So what I need you to do is to keep going, right? And head over to Raglan Road and just cross over the road and go into the woman's front garden and just explain what's going on, all right? Make sure you hold it up so we can see it. Right, he's gone. All right. So we got the Earth, we got the sun there, and then we're putting the Earth, 5pp, Raglan Road, extra vision, we're just going to imagine through there. Right, Jupiter. What I want you to do is to go to the bus stop on Washway Road. I want you to get the bus, right? And I want you to head down, and when you see Sainsbury's or Tesco, the town centre of Sale, I want you to get off, and I want you to stand outside Sainsbury's, and I want you to hold that up really high, because it's quite small so we can see it. All right, so if you want to head up. Okay, so can you get what we're feeling? We're creating this first time in history, all right? We've got the sun over there, and then we've got the Earth there. We've got Lawrence, who is on his way to Sainsbury's just now. We'll save you a coffee, don't worry.
Don't say Old Trafford, will you?
Alan.
Yeah.
What I want you to do is head out to the building, and I want you to say hi to Andy, who's on the other side of the road in that woman's garden. All right? I want you to head down to Sainsbury's and say hi to Lawrence, who's right down that road, and I just want you to keep going. All right? I want you to keep going, and you'll eventually get to the M60. I want you to go under the M60, all right? I want you to keep going, and eventually you'll come to Stretford. All right? You come to Stretford Mall, Stretford Shopping Centre. I want you to head there and stand outside holding that up, all right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ring you and say, that's not far enough, Alan. You need to keep going, all right? I'm going to ask you to keep going another half a mile, and I want you to hold that up in your hands. And then we would have an actual representation of the planets. This is scientific history here, Life Church. You were here, and I was here. Grab your seats.
See you next week.
And Jesus sustains it all. Jesus sustains it all. The planets are like so big and so far apart, you can't even create a model. If we had a big school field and we shrunk them so they were closer, all the planets would disappear that you couldn't even see them. Even if there was no buildings there and we looked, and Alan is the other side of Stretford holding a ball, that's Neptune. We can't see it, yet Jesus sustains it all. That blows my mind, and we haven't even got to galaxies or yet. And so when you take that 5pp and you zero on to a little boat with some waves. Jesus calms the storm, and he turns to the disciples and he says, that was easy. Have you any idea what I'm sustaining here? And you're worried about some waves. And he turns to me and he turns to you and he looks at the things that we're stressed about and we're worried about. And he's got, have you any idea who I am? You still have no faith. You have no trust in me. Have you not understood who I am and what I'm holding all together? And you're worried about that. And what he's not doing is minimizing the stuff that bothers you. Jesus would never do that. He's not minimizing that. He's maximizing God. He's saying that really matters. That's why I'm doing these miracles. That's why I'm talking to you. I care about you. It really bothers me that there's sin in the world, there's brokenness in your life. It stirs him. He's bothered about that. He's not minimizing that. But what he wants to do is say, if you focus on that and can't control that, you're never going to have a sense of peace. What I want to do is to turn your eyes and to maximize your sense of God. Have you got any idea who he is and what he's doing? He's sustaining all that. Because if you were to turn your eyes from the stuff that you're stressed about, the stuff that you're trying to control, and if you to I can't do it, and you to focus on him and who he is, the sense that God is great so you don't need to be in control. If you were to do that, not in an intellectual sense, but you really sense to experience the greatness and the power of God, then what happens to your fear is it lessens. What happens to your stress is it lessens. What happens to your anxiety and your worry, it lessens. And this quiet trust starts to emerge. And even in the darkest days, and I've been there, even in the darkest days, even when you can't control stuff, when you look at him and get a sense of who he is, this quiet trust emerges, and you find yourself whispering this: God is great, so it's going to be okay. God is great, so it's going to be okay. I don't know how it's going to be okay. I haven't got a clue how it's going to be okay. I'm just an ordinary bloke who lives in Eccles. I haven't got a clue about stuff like this. I have no idea what he's going to do. But I know that if he's sustaining the planets that are so big that we can't even do a model of them, that actually he can be trusted in your situation. And I know sometimes he'll come in and he'll do what he did for the disciples and he'll just change the situation like that. He's done that for me, and sometimes he will do that. Sometimes he'll come in and he'll sustain you through it, and you go through hell for weeks, months, and years, but in decades to come, you look back and he goes, he was there, he sustained me through it. Sometimes there'll be all sorts of things that come out of it that you don't work out until you get to heaven and you meet him face to face. It's not about everything getting fixed. It's about our perspective changing and knowing that we can trust him, that God is great, so we don't need to be in control. Because what's the alternative? Seriously. What's the alternative? Double down on your spreadsheet for your finances. Try to be a bit nicer in your marriage. Try and read a parenting book and try and give your kids some extra advice. All those things are good and right things, but you can't control it. And the only way you get peace is by trusting someone who can. The cure for fear is faith. Trusting someone has it under control. The cure for worry is faith. Trusting that someone somehow has it under control. The cure for stress and for panic is trusting that the someone somehow has it under control. And the fact that I can't explain that is good news. Because if I could explain it, how he was going to sort out your circumstances and all that, then we haven't got this massive God. We've got a little tiny God the size of my brain that could understand. So if you can't work it out and you don't know quite what it means, then that's good news, just to trust him. And sometimes what I do is I look back at seasons in my life. Sometimes the way I get faith is I look back at seasons in my life and think, oh, do you remember when I had that job and I had that management and that stress? Remember when we got that health situation? Do you remember when I went through a divorce? Do you remember when my kids were doing that sort of stuff? Do you remember when this happened in my finances? And I look back and I can kind of see a little bit of thread of what God was doing. I think, oh, yeah. I remember at that point I thought it was hopeless and it relied on me, and it didn't, and it relied on him. And sometimes you look back and it still doesn't make sense, but sometimes God gives us enough of threads. And looking at those threads can give us the faith to trust him. I'm going to invite the band to come up. And we're going to pray. And this is not this perspective of who God is, taking your worries and your stresses and the things that you're trying to control and putting them next to God, is not like an intellectual exercise. I can't talk to you for another hour to make it happen and you have that revelation. What we need to do is worship. And what we need to do is to open ourselves to God's presence and say, in my mind, I've got a sense that you're that big, but can you just show me that you're that big? Don't beat yourself up and like, oh, I'm still worried about this and it hasn't fixed it. Turn your eyes and say, God, can you just show me how you're bigger? That you are great, that I don't need to be in control. And I'm going to lead us in a prayer exercise, and then I'm going to leave it to the band to lead us in song, and through that, just invite God by His Spirit to change something. But just before we do that, I'm going to lead us in a prayer exercise. And I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes. I'm going to invite you just to sit comfortable, and I want you to clench your fists. And I want you to think about those things that you're desperate to control. The people that you're desperate to control. The circumstances that you're desperate just to be as you want it to be. Maybe the stuff that's causing you fear and worry. And I want you to clench your fists as hard as you can. Clench your fists as hard as you can. As you grasp onto those situations, as you hang on to them, as you try to fix them, as you try to control them, as you try to make people do what you want, as you try to make things as you want, as you try to come up with solutions, as you try to be in control, clench your fist as hard as you can. It'll probably start to hurt. And that's what it's like when we try to over-control our lives. It starts to hurt. It starts to cause us problems. And the invitation is to let go. We do the wise decisions and we speak to people and we try and do the right actions, but in our heart we let go of having an over-control. I'm going to invite you just to open your hands so that you've got your palms face up. And I'm going to pray for us that, Father, as we let go of things, as we stop grasping so tightly to our money and our health and our work and other people and our kids, whatever it might be, we open ourselves up to you. And as we worship, will you come and just blow our mind about how great you are? That your power that sustains absolutely everything. Raise our faith and our view of you. Come, Jesus, we pray. Open our eyes, break into our hearts as we worship right now, we pray.